Welcome, and thank you for coming to the State House for this afternoon's press conference of the Senate Republican Caucus. As you might notice, we're a bit bigger than we were last year, nearly double in size, and we're happy about that situation. We're thankful for the voters that have entrusted us with being 13 instead of 7, and we're anxious to get to work. I just want to start by saying that I've always viewed these types of events as press conferences and not legislative conferences. And so my remarks today will be rather brief because I really feel like this is the opportunity for the press to ask the questions that they think are important to Vermonters and to get that word out to Vermonters. We are myself and my 12 colleagues are the result of what voters said on November 5th. And what voters clearly said on November 5th and what we heard when we were out on the campaign trail is they want action on education funding, energy, public safety, and housing. And that is what we are focused on. We are working closely with the administration. We are working closely with our colleagues in the Senate, and we are also working closely with our House colleagues. But make no mistake, we are here to focus and solve those 4 problems. That is what is holding back Vermont, and that is what is creating so much angst amongst Vermonters. We need housing that people can afford. We need energy that's clean and people can afford. We need an education fund that is transparent, understandable, and more closely connects a district to its spending decision. And all communities want to feel much safer than they have the last 2 years. And so we are moving legislation through Leg Council with cooperation from the administration, and you will start to see those bills shortly. They will start turning out, and we will be focused on implementing as much of the policy in those bills as possible. The big bill, of course, which we had the briefing on Wednesday, which was the education reform proposal that Zoe Saunders introduced to both the House and the Senate. We expect to see that language the first week in February, and we are working closely with all of our colleagues and AOE to make sure that that bill, as it is introduced, addresses the concerns of Vermonters, specifically the cost of education, the efficiency of education, and the quality of education that our children receive. I'll end my prepared remarks right at this moment, and we'll take questions.
1 second, Scott.
Scott, can you speak specifically to the governance structure that Zoe Saunders outlined in terms of the number of districts that she proposed?
Sure.
I think that's appropriate.
I can help you hold it too.
We should be good.
Sure. I think everybody's seen the brief at this point. The proposal that was the plan that was introduced on Wednesday is a big change from Vermont's current 119 districts, 52 supervisory unions, and it consolidates everything down to 5 school districts and ends the practice, kind of a unique practice that Vermont has used of the supervisory union, where a superintendent actually manages different districts. This is a huge change. We'll see where this goes. As I not so jokingly say, this building is where science meets culture. And the science right now says that we absolutely are not very efficient, and part of that inefficiency is due to our use of supervisory unions and the very large numbers of school districts we have in this state, including some very tiny school districts. And I think the science, and I think Secretary Saunders will point this out in the next several weeks, the science supports a dramatic reduction in the number of school districts that we have in the state of Vermont. That science is going to meet the culture of this building, which is a reflection of the culture of Vermont. And we are interested in the conversation, and we're interested in finding efficiencies in the system. So, you know, we're supportive of a more efficient system, and that support might mean fewer school districts. I don't know if it'll be 5 or 12 or 20, but I think we have to have the conversation.
I think a lot of Vermonters, I mean, school boards don't make any salary, right? School boards are
Very nominal in the state of
volunteers
Vermont.
or nominal amounts of money. So
Yeah.
where in the consolidation effort do you see the largest opportunity for savings?
I think for savings, well, if you're talking just at the district level, 5 school boards and 5 administrative offices would achieve a lot of the savings over 119 school districts and 52 SUs. We won't save money everywhere. I mean, I don't know what the combined nominal salaries of I think it's 875 school board members in the state of Vermont is, and how that would compare to the 25 school board members in Senator Saunders or Secretary Saunders' proposal. But 25 versus 875 is a big difference.
So my point is, those people don't make a salary. They're school board members. So where is the
Well, many of them do.
the district office?
Yeah, many of them do make a salary. It's a very nominal salary. I know in my community it's $100 a month. Okay, so there's 875 people out there that could be, you know, receiving a nominal salary versus 25 people that would be receiving a larger salary. Where does the math end up there? It depends on what the salary of the 25 is, of course. But I think school board member compensation as a function of a $2.4 billion budget is minuscule.
Which is my point.
Right, and not every proposal in its individuality that Secretary Saunders is proposing necessarily saves money. You know, she's talked about an increase in the compensation for teachers. That could potentially cost more money, but it's the net that is important.
You know, in the last week, the governor had released his sort of sweeping omnibus public safety bill. What sticks out to you the most as the priority, and what does legislation look like to correct what Vermonters want to see?
Yeah, I think I look at the public safety bill and the list of items that are in there, and I think it equates to basically keeping dangerous people out of our communities. And right now, because of a number of different factors, I'm going to let Senator Norris go into some detail on those. I think every community, maybe not every community, but increasingly, communities are having experiences with dangerous people that probably should not have been on the streets. I just had that experience in St. Johnsbury just before the holidays with what happened there. And we just had a situation, of course, up in Derby and a lot of other communities. You know, the gentleman in Burlington has 1,800 and something infractions. And so for me, it boils down to getting people that are going to damage communities to get them out of communities so that communities can be safe again. But I'm going to let Senator Norris go into any detail that he thinks appropriate on that subject.
Thank you, Senator Beck. In looking at the governor's omnibus bill, as you know, it's well over 40 pages long. There's a lot in it. There's a lot to be dissected in it. We've split it up between House Judiciary and Senate Judiciary. But the message that we're getting from Vermonters is they want accountability. They refer to it as the catch and release system. They've had enough of that. They want to feel safe in their homes. The Constitution provides for us to do that. And we know the problems that are existing out there, and I believe Cam just did a story on it there. This morning I was watching on TV. Obviously, that's part of the problem, but not all of the problem. We're looking at raising the age to 19, which will start in the House Judiciary. We've been tasked with universal sealing and expungement of criminal records, which is going to take weeks, I might add. It's nothing we're going to do overnight here. There's a lot of constitutional issues in this. And also one of the big pictures is revise the current law on revoking bail as the bail exists right now. We have numerous offenses that are taking place when someone's out on violations of conditions of release. And while they're out there, we've had as many as in the 60s and 70s in certain counties where individuals go out and remain committing crimes while they're out there, but they're not really crimes as we know it. These crimes that they're committing are nothing more than simply violations of conditions. The judge imposes no alcohol, possessing, drinking, whatever else, curfews, whatever. Under regular times, those would be crimes as we know them. But because they appeared before a judge and the judge says, these are the conditions that I'm releasing you on, but bail can only be used in one instance and one instance only, and that's to assure their appearance in court. So we're looking at revising the current bail laws as they exist now. There are two exceptions in Title 13, I believe 7553 and 7553A, and those, without getting into the large discussion on it, is anything that carries a life sentence, you can revoke bail if in fact the courts can prove that there's a danger or risk to society, and 7553A states that it's a heinous crime, and if they can show that there's a public safety risk, they can also revoke bail. But there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes on this, and many of these issues are constitutional issues. So we've got our hands full in judiciary working on these particular issues.
What is the message to Vermonters with the number of bills that you're working to institute this session when it comes to public safety? I think the message is they want accountability, they want it now. How do you ensure that happens this session?
Well, I'm not going to ensure anything or guarantee anything, obviously, Cam, but what I can tell you is we've heard the message. They want accountability. I believe personally that we are soft on crime here in the state of Vermont. We see it in our largest cities throughout the state of Vermont. We see it in the statistics and the data within the state of Vermont. So I can assure you that there is a larger group of individuals who are going to be reaching across the aisle this year and working with our majority. Excuse me, I apologize to anybody out there. Working with our majority, and I'm sure that they too want to see these problems resolved.
Switching to climate, in the House, there's one bill to make the greenhouse gas reduction emissions to just goals or deadlines, and also to repeal it in general. Obviously, with the Clean Heat Standard report recently come out, but have there been any conversations with your colleagues in the other party about these deadlines so far throughout the session, or do you foresee those in the future? Kind of where does that conversation stand in the Senate?
We are having conversations. I think, we had a joint meeting with the PUC last week where they laid out the Clean Heat Standard and what they thought. And my message to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle has been this. We think climate change is important, and climate resiliency is important, and carbon reduction is very important. But we have to be realistic about what we can do without putting an undue burden on Vermonters. We could, if the Clean Heat Standard was implemented, could it help us meet these mandatory requirements in the GWSA? Yes. Is that something that Vermonters can afford? The position of our caucus is no. And so what we support is the continuation of programs that reduce carbon, whether they're funded by federal, state, private, Efficiency Vermont. We are supportive of continuing those programs. I think where the conversation ends, and we're not willing to go there, is are we willing to entertain additional tax revenues, fees, or penalties to accelerate what is already happening, which is carbon reduction. Carbon reduction has happened in Vermont over the last 30 years, and it's actually been quite significant. Where we are open to a conversation is if our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, if they want to reprioritize carbon reduction in our normal appropriations process in the general fund, if they want to take from some other program that's not as important and give more money to carbon reduction that they deem, or that we as a body agree is more important, then we are open to that conversation. But we are not open to making Vermonters' lives more unaffordable by increasing taxes, penalties, or fees at this moment in time.
Scott, right now there's a bill in the House that would make farmland and forest land in current use count towards the conservation lands required by the 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 biodiversity law. What do you think of the idea of allowing current use land to be counted as conserved lands towards meeting that goal?
I think if it meets the goal of the 30 by 30 and 50 by 50, then I'd say yes. I haven't seen the details of that bill, Guy. You said it's a House bill? I think, yeah. It's in the details, but I mean, if ag land or forest land is meeting what we expect conserved lands to do, then I'd say I think I'm definitely open to that conversation.
Clean car rules coming down the pike shortly here.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the merits of remaining in that rule, and if you don't think it's a good idea, what's your plan?
Yeah, when it's last session, I believe, when Vermont decided to enter into that agreement, which is no new internal combustion engine cars after 2035, I felt that was far too fast. I still think it's far too fast, and I think that requirement again flows out of the Global Warming Solutions Act, which with required carbon reductions. And I don't know what the year is. Is it 2045? Is it 2055? But I don't think that 2035 coincides with the affordable, available technology that exists right now in the car and truck fleet that Vermonters can afford.
So it's the governor that made the decision to become a part of that rule to join with California.
Yeah.
Who's your audience for this? Are you talking to him? You introduce some legislation?
I'm talking to Vermonters. I mean, I think we have some unknowns right now with the executive orders that were issued down in D.C. earlier in the week as to whether that California emission is going to even be a thing anymore. So I'm going to wait and see. But I mean, I don't think that Vermonters can transition to all electric vehicles in an affordable way by 2035.
Speaking of those executive orders, obviously implications for every state where we have a new presidential administration taking office. Your high-level thoughts on what you're seeing out of the White House from a policy perspective in the first week?
My high-level thoughts are wait and see. We're 96 hours post-inauguration. I think all of these executive orders, there are statutory layers, rule layers, regulation layers. There are layers at the state level, and I am, wait and see. I think that, some of the things I hear of cause me concern, but, they're 4 days old. I don't even know if they're going to be implemented. I think when I think about things that might come out, the first thing I think about is Vermonters. And is anything that's coming out of there going to hurt Vermonters? And if it is, then what can we do to protect people that might be damaged? But I think it's far too early to understand where we might need to push back and where we might just need to stand back.
What are the top 2 or 3 things that are giving you concern?
I think concerns. I have concerns about trans and LGBTQ executive orders that have come out. That's at the top of the list. That's the one I find the most concerning. But beyond that, I'm just wait and see on the other ones.
Do you have any concern about the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement?
I think, I haven't really thought that one through. Of course, the question is, if you withdraw, what happens? We can reduce carbon reduction without being part of the Paris Accords. We could be more aggressive than the Paris Accords if we want to. So whether we're in or out, I'm not sure really means that much.
What do you think about the Trump administration's, antipathy, if you were, towards sanctuary states?
Yeah. Somehow in the lingo of the last day or so, people have assumed that Vermont is a sanctuary state, which we're not. I just want to put that out there. As far as immigration is concerned, I think Republicans, support a legal system that is organized and accountable, where people can come into this country and leave this country and in a legal way and in a documented way. Vermont relies heavily on our immigrant workforce that is in this state already working, especially in our dairy industry. And I think we need to acknowledge as a country that we need a legal framework and that these immigrants are very, very important to our country. In fact, they've been the lifeblood of our country for 250 years, if not more. I think we need to keep those 2 things in mind. And when they're here, we need to be very respectful of them, just like we would any other non-citizen.
we've got a 2017 law, I think, that says no police participation with federal, with ICE. I think that kind of makes us the sanctuary state.
I think it's more of a passive than an active. Yeah.
A bill introduced in the Senate just a couple days ago kind of spurred up late in last session dealing with cell phones in classrooms and family. One out of the 3 members in your caucus on the Education Committee co-sponsored it as bipartisan. I guess just how big of a priority, if at all, is that going to be for the caucus this year after what we saw kind of towards the end of last session?
I mean, we haven't had that conversation as a caucus. I don't think having cell phones for personal use in class is a good idea. I'm an educator. I think, you know, some of the literature and the research that came out over the summer was like, thank you. There's some actual research here that indicates and verifies what teachers and educators have been feeling. And I know in the area of the state where I teach, this year there has been widespread adoption of no cell phone policies in school. They take different forms, right? Some schools put them in your bag, don't take them out. Others put them in a locked bag at the main office. Others, you can use them when you're in between classes. And I think each school district is going to come up with a policy that works for it, but maybe we need a statewide law. I'm not sure. I mean, we're going to have that conversation in the education committees, but there's a lot of different flavors. And but I think the good news is people are thinking about getting cell phones out of classes because they are not helpful in class unless they're being used for an educational purpose.
I'll ask just briefly back to the public safety. The raise the age conversation. I know the governor wants to repeal it completely. Eventually would raise to 22, I believe. Is there any compromise on behalf of the Republican caucus when it comes to raise the age, and if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, we haven't had a conversation about a specific number, but I think that, I mean, even if we went to 18 would still be, to some degree, an outlier in the United States. So I'm not putting that as a number, but I think it's a possible landing spot.
There's a Medicaid waiver for allowing funds to be spent for homeless housing. Is that something that you'd be entertaining?
I saw that article the other day, Guy. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. I'm not sure if any of our health and welfare people have had a chance to look at it in committee. But if Vermont could draw down Medicaid revenues to help with our homeless situation, I think that's something we should certainly consider doing. It's an unfortunate situation that, in spite of a lot of best efforts, has not been getting smaller.
So did I understand you to say that as far as spending any more money on the clean heat standard, adding to the cost of a gallon of fuel oil, your number is 0?
Yes. Yeah, we are not supportive of increasing a tax, penalty, or fee on heating fuel. As I think probably most of you in the audience know, Vermont already does have a carbon tax of sorts on fuel, and it's 2 pennies. It's the fuel tax, and it's been around for, well, since before I was in the legislature. And so that's already there. We are not in favor of increasing that.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Sorry, one final question. We do have some conventions of states folks here seeking a constitutional convention for term limits. Any interest in that from the GOP Senate caucus?
We haven't even had a conversation about the Convention of States as a caucus, and so I couldn't comment for the caucus. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for coming. Have a great weekend. All right.